it takes work. But just, it's like anything in life. I think when you put that work into it on reaching your full potential and becoming like the best version of yourself, you get that back in spades. Like you'll see that that's when all the good stuff happens after you like push through.
Welcome to Amy Liz Harrison's podcast, Eternally Amy, a mum of 8's journey from jail to joy. A Gen Xer who overcame her struggle with alcohol to become a best-selling author and mental health advocate. She shares stories of hope and offers ideas for others struggling with mental health challenges, spirituality, ADHD, or maybe just family, travel, and logistics. One thing is for sure, you'll leave with something to chew on. And now, here's your host, Amy Liz Harrison, with your mystery meat sandwich.
Greetings, compadres. I am so excited to welcome you back to another episode of Eternally Amy. And for your mystery meat sandwich today, I have a quote that I just wanted to share that I don't even know who this is by. Could be an Instagrammer. I'm not super sure, but I've heard it a lot. And the quote is, "We recover out loud so that others don't suffer in silence." So just a little something for you to think about as you listen to today's episode. And I am thrilled and excited to welcome Claire Comai today to talk to us about all of the endeavors that she's involved in. She has such an incredible website. I was looking through it and I was like, what in the world? This is the coolest thing ever. Made me just really pumped and excited to be a part of sobriety, be a part of the movement of recovery. Let's see. I'm going to just read a little tiny bit from the website so that you get kind of an idea and a picture of what she does. Rehab Studios, and that's what she created, is a brand born from real people and their real journeys of recovery from addiction and mental illness. Our aim is to create a collection that celebrates and inspires recovery in others. So this is cool. Check this out. Her brand is about shedding the anonymity and speaking out against the stigma. Recovery is something to be celebrated, not kept secret. We're here to commemorate everyone who has ever struggled and won against these diseases, and to inspire and support those still sick, still suffering, and still fighting. Claire, welcome.
Thank you so much, Amy. I'm so excited to be here.
Yay. Okay, so first of all, this is a random question, and I did not tell you that I would be asking this. Are you located in the New York area?
Yes. I'm in Brooklyn, actually, in Bushwick.
Check this out. I have a cousin also named Claire, fun fact, who lives in Brooklyn.
Oh my God, no way.
Yeah, isn't that weird? I know.
Wow.
And he got me started on one of my favorite Instagram accounts of all time. The one that's called What is New York? Have you seen that one?
Oh my God, yes. Yes,
Okay.
I follow that account. So funny.
So yeah, it's all, what it is kind of these like random, things that people record of like people just being themselves out on the streets of New York. Like, for example, the one I saw this morning was the caption was, "Why my bus was late," or something like that. And it had this guy walking across the street who had a toilet on his head. And he was just like kind of dancing in front of like the bus, and the bus couldn't go. And I was just dying. I'm like, classic, perfect, love it.
Yeah, that's like classic New York.
Right?
Just craziness out here.
So good. Okay. So first things first, I think you're a creative genius because the name Rehab Barbie is like the best thing ever. And I'm curious as to how you came up with that.
Yeah. So the story behind the name Rehab Barbie is good friend of mine, we're both in recovery, and we were talking about how addiction is so stigmatized, and when people are recovering from other diseases, it's, looked to as a strength, like a cancer survivor, like that's something admirable. And Barbie, which is this iconic doll that's supposed to be like the aspiration for women everywhere, they've had this push to be more inclusive, and they have like a cancer survivor Barbie, a disabled Barbie. But of course, there's, no Rehab Barbie. And we were like, well, where the hell is Rehab Barbie? Like, where is that image of an aspirational woman who has the brain disease of addiction or a mental health problem or something in that area, and goes through the steps to overcome that? And that is, that's an aspirational, admirable thing too. And just having that for little girls who, like, their mother may be an addict, or they themselves may struggle with addiction or mental health down the line. Like, we need a Rehab Barbie.
Oh, yes, we do. And I love it so much. That is amazing. I love it. I love it. And, yeah, props to you. That is just the coolest name. And I love the way you explained it. Thank you so much. What a lovely, picture of being able to, help be the force to just kind of get rid of some of that. I think, it's weird. It's like we're starting to make some progress with the stigma, but holy cow, not very much. Like, it's slow, right? It's just kind of like,
Yeah.
all right, let's get the ball rolling, right? Like,
yeah.
So, what I wanted to do is just kind of turn the floor over to you. Take as much time as you want, whatever you're comfortable with. I would love to hear about your journey of recovery, your journey of how you ended up, where you are today. And so go for it.
Okay, well, I am now 3.5 years sober. I just had my half year recently.
Congrats.
Thank you. I got sober pretty young because I started drinking pretty young. I was in middle school. I was 14. I was drinking with friends, and it's a lot of why I really believe in the disease model of addiction, and that some people have a genetic predisposition towards addiction, and the alcohol can cause different reactions in different people's brains depending on your brain chemistry. Because for me, as soon as I drank for the first time, I was immediately obsessed with it. It was my favorite thing in the world. I wanted to be drinking all the time. If I hadn't been a 14-year-old who had parents and had to go to school, like, that's what I would have done. I was drinking alone. I was just, it was right away. And I went to my first AA meeting when I was like 16, 17. And it didn't take at that point. And I remember like writing my college admissions essays drunk, and all sorts of crazy things. And then I went to college, university in Montreal. And then there I had like more freedom, and the drinking age is 18 there. And it just, it really took off. It was pretty clear to me early on, maybe 19, 18, that I was an alcoholic for sure. That's something that people in my family have struggled with. And I studied psychology. We talked about alcohol use disorder. I blew that criteria out of the water at like age 17. So, early on, I knew I had an issue with it. And and so did my family and people close to me. But I didn't want to stop. I wasn't ready. And I was just a functional alcoholic for a bit there. I mean, I went to school, I graduated university. I had my internships while in university. I moved to New York afterwards, started looking for a job. But like my number one extracurricular was drinking, and it just really consumed so much of my life. I really credit my family for pushing me to get sober when I did, because as I said, I knew I had a problem. Sometimes I'd be kind of in denial, but I mean, deep down I knew. But I just didn't want to stop. And I had no idea how. And I did all the tricks to like try and moderate. I would count my drinks. I saw like a counselor who helped, like a substance abuse counselor, weekly to work on moderation. She was like, you really just should stop. And I was like, no. But a few months after I graduated college, I moved back to the States. I was in New York. My family's in Philadelphia, so I was closer to them, and they could kind of see firsthand, what was going on with me. And they said to me that they're really worried about me and that they wanted me to give sobriety a try. And it was, coming from my parents, coming from my siblings. I have 3 younger siblings. I'm very, very close with my family. And it really just hit a nerve and pushed me to give it a go. I started going to AA. I worked with a sober coach. And, I said to myself, like, I'll just give it a try. I was 24 years old. So, a lot of times they'll say in AA or other recovery communities, like, you're making the decision to never drink again. And at that point in my life, that wasn't something that I was going to do. I wasn't comfortable making any decisions that were going to last for the rest of my life, So I really latched onto that one day at a time. And I thought, I can see that drinking's been such a part of my life and affected my life in so many ways. I owe it to myself to give life a try without the alcohol. And of course, like the first few weeks were horrible, but you have to give your body and your brain, most importantly, a chance to reset. I had spent like 10 years drinking. So I was like, I gotta at least do like 6 months or a year sober. And you know what? If at that point in my life, I decide this isn't for me and I'm not going to do that, then that's that. But I owe it to myself to give sobriety a try. And it changed my life. I mean, it was amazing. At first, it was so hard and difficult. I had terrible, terrible cravings. And just kind of like learning how to do life sober. Like I'd never gone out without drinking. I'd never been on a date where I wasn't drinking. Like all of that, I just had to kind of relearn what to do. And dealing with negative emotions that everyone gets, anxiety or depression, sadness, all of that. You have to learn how to deal with it without turning to what was my favorite crutch, alcohol, and learning to celebrate without alcohol, just relearning all of that, and just becoming more comfortable being out and about and going out and meeting new people and not drinking, even though that's really abnormalized in society. So getting used to that. but oh my God, it was so worth it. Like, it's been amazing. I just have had so many amazing experiences and met incredible people and been able to start this brand. And it's, it's definitely been worth it.
I love that because, that was one thing that when I was still drinking, I was like, I can't imagine my life without alcohol. Like, I literally thought my life was over. So to think that, all of this would be on the other side of that, how amazing. Sometimes I wonder if I would have gotten sober quicker had I known, no, actually, it's really going to be okay. Like, you're going to just have this incredible life. I mean, I probably would have just kept drinking, but I wonder, I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I didn't want to stop drinking because, even though I knew like it'd be better for like my health and just like my life in general was chaos, but I just thought it would be so boring. And it's the complete opposite. I mean, genuinely, like when I look back at that time, like just, going out and drinking, going out to the same places, the same people every night, like that is so boring compared to what's happening now.
That's fantastic. And before you tell me about Rehab Studios and all of the exciting things, I just want to tell you so many things that I related to in your story. So first of all, thank you for sharing it. Oh my gosh. But I love that you shared so openly about like, this is what I was doing, like the unmanageability piece, how it was showing up in your life, like, gosh, I went to university and like this was my extracurricular activity. And even prior to that, like applying to university, like I'm like drunk. And I mean, that's so real. That stuff is just, that's how it is as an alcoholic, is like, everything we do revolves around drinking when we're in our disease. And, I just totally identify with you. I totally remember when I was in my disease, like I would freak out about like everything I did in a day. Was there going to be a chance for me to drink wherever I went or whatever I was doing? And if not, I would have to like bring minis with me. So I had to like pre-plan. It's like a full-time job, and then I had to like get drunk enough, but not too drunk that I couldn't function. Like, it was kind of a thing. It became super difficult at the end and I couldn't do it anymore. But I love that you shared about that unmanageability. And then I love that you were talking about how you were trying the moderation tactics. Girl, me too. I tried all those moderation tactics. I was like, and I read all those books. You're okay. I'm okay. Everybody's okay. Like I listened to these like hypnotizing tapes and took all these vitamins. And I really wanted to moderate, man. Like that was my goal. So I completely get all that. So, and the one day at a time, like, thank you for sharing that, because I think that's such an important concept that sometimes, as we get like a little bit further along in our journeys, sometimes we forget. No. It's one day at a time. I remember when I got sober, freaking out about like my daughter's wedding, which PS at the time, my daughter was like 7, right? But it was like, oh, I'm not going to be able to drink at her wedding. Oh my gosh, what's it going to be like? Oh no. And I remember my counselor was like, yeah, so you're going to just, put that aside and you're going to just worry about what you're doing today. And I just thought, how can you say that? Like I'm a planner and I had all this craziness inside my head, but I really identified with that and owing it to yourself to give life a try and your brain a chance to reset. And then the terrible cravings, girl, I feel you. I had that too. And it wasn't until for me, my temporary sponsor at the time asked, hey, have you prayed for the obsession to be released? And I was like, what? No, like, I didn't know you could do that. Like, I would have taken that magic pill earlier, someone had told me that. And and that really helped me. It wasn't instantaneous, but it helped a lot. I was no longer leaving meetings like salivating for alcohol on the way home. So that was a huge key for me. And then lastly, like, just have to touch on what you said about like learning to do life and unlearning. Like, what I heard you say was kind of unlearning your ways of celebrating and, just dealing with things. And, that was the hardest part, right? Like, is just, how do I live as a sober person? Like, now that I'm feeling all my feelings, I'm stuck with these freaking feelings, like, what do I do? And, it's like that book that's like, can't go over it, can't go under it, can't go around it, gotta go through it. And it's the same thing. It was for me, is like, oh my gosh, like I have to feel it to heal it, to get through it. Like, it's actually so much better than drinking. Like, as much as I liked to think that drinking was my solution when I was drinking, it was like my problems were just freaking amplified. I mean, I was just pouring gasoline all over that fire. So I completely identify with that. And so thank you for sharing all of that and your lovely story. And yeah, so tell me about Rehab Studios.
Okay, so Rehab Studios, well, when I got sober, after I kind of, got used to it and got through that first like 6 months to a year, I suddenly had a lot more free time that I used to fill with drinking. And my background's in fashion marketing and communications. And I've always been like an artistically inclined person. Like, I just enjoy, painting and drawing and making jewelry and that type of thing. And so that was really kind of that like artsy creative type of thing was an outlet for me when I had cravings or when I had all this free time and I was like, what do I do with myself? Like, I started making jewelry, and I started like creating these like graphic designs and sketching out designs. And it really, it just started as a hobby. It was fun and it was therapeutic. And then, someone said to me, well, you could get some of these designs made. It never occurred to me. I was like, oh, okay, why not? So that's when I started looking at suppliers and ordering samples, and it was still kind of just a hobby, but it just grew and grew, and people seemed to like the designs, and because like so much of it, what had like motivated me to go start on these artistic endeavors, and what was such a part of my life at that time and still now is my sobriety, that started to come out in my designs. And I just like wanted to have fun with it. Like, wouldn't it be great if everyone has these like sweatshirts that they walk around that say like, Penn State or Harvard? Like, what if one said Rehab? So just like having fun with it. Recovery is like, obviously it's really a difficult process. So I like to have as much fun as I can with that part of it. And that's kind of how it started. We started with jewelry. We launched, at that point, it was just me on Kickstarter. And after getting fully funded on Kickstarter, I launched on a website, started expanding into clothing. I have a business partner now and some employees, so we're growing. And so that's really how it began, and just seeing how people responded to the brand, not just liking the clothes or liking the designs, but I've had people say like it was really meaningful to them, if there's someone who's struggling with addiction, or I've had people say they've been struggling with like an abusive partner, or going through a depressive episode, and it really spoke to them. So that, is just obviously so meaningful.
That's amazing. And so, like, where do you sell your stuff? Do you have an online store?
Right. Yeah. So right now we are online at rehabstudiosny.com. We are going to be sold on sober.com soon as well. And then we're looking to expand into other retailers. For anybody in the New York City area, we will be at a Fashion Week event, and you can buy stuff there and come in and see the stuff in person. So definitely stay tuned on our socials. But yeah, right now the best place to get everything is rehabstudiosny.com.
Okay, that's amazing. I love too that your background, being in communications and marketing, is like, okay, so you found a way to deal with your cravings in a healthy way. And then, like, coupled with skills that you already had, like this whole new chapter opens for you, like this whole new door. And I love it because it's like, when we're sober, we can actually move forward and pursue those dreams. Like we can be a part of that unfolding, right? Whereas like before, like some of the things that I used to just sit around and talk about with my buddies while we were drinking, it's like that stuff never, even as small as, oh, let's go shopping tomorrow. Oh, because we're best friends. We're going to hit all these stores. And then the next day, of course, we're not going to go shopping. Girl, are you kidding?
Right.
Like, no, we're all hungover. We don't even really know each other that well, but we thought we were going to like hit Rodeo Drive. Like we're going to fly to, LA, and we're not. So I love that being sober allowed you to be present for all of this and to, follow this path, and, to see it doing so well must be so exciting.
Yeah, it's super exciting. And yeah, I totally agree. I used in college, I did the same thing. I was like sketching like designs, and I was into that sort of thing, but like I didn't have the time or the energy to like launch a brand because I was too hungover or drunk. So yeah, definitely being sober just it opened up this possibility for me 100%.
So cool. So since you mentioned AA, I just thought I would ask, sometimes, all right, well, no, first I'll tell you a little story, and then you tell me if you've had any experiences with this. I had somebody in my life when I started my like original podcast back in 2018. And I had somebody in my life like approach me, and all was going fine, whatever. And that person was like, you know what, you're going against like the traditions of AA. You shouldn't be like talking about AA. We don't promote, we don't, and it was so confusing to me because I totally understand the tradition. Like I get that. And I respect it. And I think for me, the thing was at a personal level, like I had no problem talking about, my alcoholism and how I was getting sober. I had no problem with that on a personal level. And so I asked the person, hey, have you ever listened to it before? And that person was like, no. And so there was that. But then also, it was just so interesting because it was like, gosh, sometimes like if something does more good than harm, and what, I don't know. And of course, at that time, there were all those celebrities who came out, right? And they were talking about getting sober. And then, it was like basically around the same time when like Russell Brand came out and he had his, 12-step book and all of this. And so I kind of said to the person, what would make this better for you? Like, do you have any suggestions? Not that I'm going to like follow it, but do you, know what it would be that would make you feel better about this? And so basically the person was concerned that I said AA. So I said, okay, I'll say 12-step. And so it's kind of funny because everybody kind of knows what that is if you're linked at all, to any of the, anonymous worlds. And so I'm like, you know what? It makes a difference. All right, great. I'm going to say 12-step and then be in, sort of compliance. But it is kind of interesting because that was the only person that ever said anything to me about it. And, there were people I knew who had like 35, 40 years of sobriety who were like, you're doing great things, honey. And so I just clung on to that, So I was wondering if you had any experiences, similar experience with people talking to you about anonymity and what you did about them.
Yeah. It's very interesting. So no one's ever approached me in that way before. And in a lot of cases, it's been the opposite. I've had people say, I love that you're so open and honest about your story and it's helpful to other people. I think the anonymity of AA it's an amazing thing. But to me, respecting the anonymity means respecting everyone else's anonymity. The things you hear in the rooms, stay in the rooms, the people you see there, everything. It's set up that way so that people can go and get help and not have to deal with this unfortunate stigma in society. But I don't think that, my interpretation of that is it doesn't extend to my own personal story. And I understand why people want to remain anonymous because of that stigma. And it's, depends on where you are, like with your job, your employer, your family, just all of that. If you don't want to be open about it, that is so understandable. And it's because of this effed up stigma we have in society. But like, I'm not, my dad's not a senator, like I'm not working for the government or whatever. So I was like, I can share my story. And I'm lucky that, New York's pretty liberal and progressive and it's people, I'm sure some people judge me, but in general, I haven't faced any negative consequences. So I am more than happy to be one of the ones to talk openly about it because I do think we need some people to break the anonymity just to shed more light on addiction and how it affects people. And so more resources and attention are given to the disease as a whole. And it, because, and I read something interesting, like when the AIDS epidemic was at its peak, people weren't talking about it because this was a time when homophobia was even more rampant and open, and the gay community, they didn't always feel comfortable being like, I am gay and I have AIDS, because that was so stigmatized. And I believe it was an article, a book I was reading, likened that to the addict community, because when the gay community started like marching in the streets and being open and being like, I'm gay and proud and I have AIDS and this is a problem and we need like more funds and more research and more done to help with this disease, people started paying attention. And there was more research, there was more money put into finding like ways to deal with it and prevention and awareness. So the addiction community, because people don't want to talk about it being a personal problem, and again, I get that, and I'm not saying you should share if you don't feel comfortable. That is why it's addiction is like a leading cause of death in our country, and it costs our government billions. It's, the percentage of people incarcerated who are addicts, like health issues. It's insane, but there isn't a proportionate number of resources and government funding and grants and attention paid to the issue. I think in part because it's just not spoken about and people aren't as comfortable talking about how it affects their life, because of the stigma. So, yeah, I mean, that's why I feel that it's important because, of my life circumstances. I do feel comfortable speaking out about it. And I think we need that in the addict community.
I completely agree. And that was fire. That was such a good way of explaining it. Thanks so much for bringing that up. Because, yeah, that's exactly right. Like, it is so interesting. It's like, when things are shrouded in secrecy, right? That's when it's like, oh, it becomes this like taboo thing when somebody brings it up. It's like, oh my gosh, like what are they talking about? I can't believe they're saying that out loud, right? And it's like, but why? Because yeah, I've got some family members who are we'll say very conservatively religious. And it's interesting because they've got some super strong viewpoints. And I'm here to say that I understand those because I was raised that way, like in that kind of, institution. Like I sort of get the whole language I speak, but I can't do it anymore because now it's like I can't unsee just how damaging it is to just have just one viewpoint of something, even if you don't understand it. And it was sort of like, kind of one of those things where we had some run-ins a couple times along life's path, not even recently, but like in earlier years, because judgments would be made by some of those family members about things that like they didn't struggle with. Like it wasn't a part of their life, but they were going to just be the end all be all of like what the authority voice was. And like, it was of course self-appointed. And it was kind of like, yeah, I mean, I get that because I sadly, and it's one of my regrets, used to kind of be more that way. And now I'm like, anything that I don't struggle with, first of all, I'm like, well, thank you, God, that I don't, it's like one thing, that I'm not. But secondly, like I have the biggest like heart of compassion for like, there are so many things that people go through and life is lifey, right? Like it's relentless. It keeps coming at us. And now that we have access to, learn more about mental illness and really what that entails and what that looks like for people on a daily basis, all the different facets of mental illness, not just like, well, anxiety and depression. Well, go do something that makes you happy and like sing a song. Like, I mean, people are so narrow-minded sometimes about like, you know what, if you've ever experienced it, like you would know how condescending that sounds, and so it's clear that, people haven't or say that they haven't or no experience with it. So it's just it's a fascinating world. And I love that you are doing the work that you're doing because it's just so important. And I don't even know what the statistics are, but I know that, because it keeps changing, right? Because drinking during the pandemic took such a hike. There was such a spike, in people who used drinking to cope with loneliness, with fear, with all of that stuff. And so, yeah, I think that, it's crucial because people can get the impression that like, oh, well, sobriety worked for her and now she has her own company and, she gets to do the things she loves, which is create, but it probably won't work for me, and it's like, you don't know until you really try. And no, it's not like you jump into it and like overnight, this is the best thing ever and life is fantastic. Like, no, it's hard effing work. Just like you shared earlier, like the first, few weeks, it's like terrible, right? So important to have like a support network. And so yeah.
And I mean, the first few months even, and I still, sometimes I still get cravings once in a while. There were points in the beginning I was like sitting on the ground in the fetal position crying. I wanted to drink so goddamn bad.
Yep.
Like, it was, I've never struggled. I mean, it's the hardest thing I ever did in my life. And I still, I'm to be honest, I'm shocked, but shocked that it worked. But no, it takes work. But just, it's like anything in life, I think when you put that work into it on reaching your full potential and becoming like the best version of yourself, you get that back in spades. Like you'll see that that's when all the good stuff happens after you like push through.
Dude, Claire, thank you so much. Like my heart is full. Thank you for sharing all of your story that you did. And as we kind of wrap up here, I'm just wondering what is next for you?
Yeah, so we are working on expanding our line. We have a lot of new designs. I'm really, really, really excited about. I just got some samples in today. Just working on finding like the best suppliers, the best quality, and refining our designs. We are doing an event at New York Fashion Week. And we have some exciting collaborations with some other creators coming up. So definitely stay tuned. I'm really, really excited about just seeing where Rehab Studios goes.
Well, you go, girl. That is fantastic. And then where can people find you on socials?
So me personally, you can find me on Instagram, Claire Comai, and then Rehab Studios NY. We're on both Instagram and TikTok.
Yay. That is fantastic. Well, Claire, thank you. It's such a joy talking to you. And as I wrap up, I just want to say for any of my fellow 12-steppers that I endorse the program of Alcoholics Anonymous. It does not endorse me. So I just wanted to make that clear for my statements that I said. And Claire, I'm really taken by your story. I just think it's like a fantastic example of like life out of sobriety. Like you never know, the phoenix rises from the ashes and, a whole new story can be waiting. And I love to see you walking through that. So cool. So I look forward to hearing more, and I just want to wish you the very, very best. And thank you so much for coming on.
You too, and thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much for listening to Eternally Amy. Amy Liz Harrison is a best-selling author, speaker, 12-step coach, meditation teacher, and recovery advocate. To find out more, please visit amylizharrison.com. Keep up with Amy on all platforms by following @AmyLizHarrison. Please subscribe and review this podcast. It means so much to us if you do.